Peach Blossom Det. Chapter 9. Guanjianzi did not seem to be even 50 years old, more likely in his 40s. The instant I opened my eyes, I first caught a whiff of something rancid, so much that I felt dizzy. This man had not washed up in a very long time. I reached out to feel myself. There was a fairly long beard under my chin, which felt sticky to the touch. I picked it up for a look, just in time to see a bug scurrying through the dense gaps as if foraging for food. I could not bring myself to continue. Heng Wen tossed me a word from where he was in midair. What a stinky, unkempt Daoist priest. Don't expect me to stick around you. I'll come again when you've cleaned yourself up. Having said that, he vanished. Seriously, is this Daoist priest more unkempt than Li Siming's corpse? You sang such pretty words while we were at the coffin, but look at you now. There was nowhere on me that was not itchy. I reached behind my neck to scratch it, rubbing out a considerably sized grey lump of dirt. I flicked it away, rubbed again, then flicked again, quite interesting. The top of my head was itching terribly, and I could vaguely feel something running around. I heard there was a kind of bug called flea, and in all probability, that was the culprit. The banging on the door persisted. I scratched my scalp and opened the door even as one of my hands was rubbing around a ball of dirt. The person outside was also a Daoist priest. He had a slightly oval face, and looked rather stocky and good-natured. You're finally awake, he said at the top of his voice. I thought you had gotten immortalized in there. Wasn't that exactly the case? First, he breathed his last, and then this great lord came to immortalize him. Right, I said. I toured thousands of mountains inhabited by immortals, then it suddenly turned into a dream. I've practically forgotten all affairs of the secular world, I don't even remember you. Then you have to remember it, immortal Guanjian, the Daoist priest said. This humble Daoist is Chang Shan, the errand runner of Minjihu Temple. Don't forget to look out for me when you become an immortal. He chuckled merrily as he rubbed his hands. You told this humble Daoist to remind you this morning not to oversleep, so I came to call you earlier. This day is like none other. It's the princely manners ritual ceremony. We are severely lacking in people in the temple. It hasn't been easy to get the nod from the master and let you fill in and make up the numbers. The least you could do is to wash up and change into something more decent. My eyes lit up at the words wash up. Where is the water? Amazing, Chang Shan quipped as he led me to the backyard. You usually say you won't bathe for fear of getting ill from excessive water. To think you'd actually come to your senses today. There was a wooden shed in the backyard, with a well in the shed, a bucket and a large wooden basin beside it. I bolted the door to the shed, filled the basin full of water, and craned my neck out for a look. A shaggy head came into view. This immortal lord remained by the side of the well. Drawing several basins of water and using more than a caddy of soap before my hair and beard smoothed it out, and my skin was scrubbed of grime to reveal a normal complexion. Chang Shan prepared a set of brand new clothes for me to change into. After my hair was secured and my beard neatly combed, I felt light all over. It was only then that Heng Wen drifted over. Taking advantage of the absence of possible onlookers, I dusted my brand new Daoist robe and asked, do I have the aura of immortal Lu of the 8 immortals? If I play along and say yes, Lu Dongbin will no doubt destroy my Weiyiwen palace, Heng Wen said. I let out a wry laugh. Don't I look a lot more handsome than I did this morning? After a moment of silence, Heng Wen answered with sincerity, you look human now. I followed the Daoist priests from Minjihu Temple and arrived at the Prince of the Eastern Commandery's manor. Striding across the threshold, I was overwhelmed with emotions. Just a few days ago, I was family to the people across this threshold. Although Li Siming was not as suave as this immortal lord, he was, at the very least, a handsome and youthful young master. But now, he was rotting in his coffin, and in exchange, this immortal lord got a middle-aged Daoist priest with a complexion that resembled a wind-dried persimmon skin. Did Minga and the Jade Emperor expect me to seduce Tianqiu with this face? The ritual ceremony for the 35th day of Li Ximing's death was ostentatiously done up, with a total of 8 Daoist temples and 66 Daoist priests reciting the scriptures. It was among this crowd that I shook a bell. I saw the prince of the Eastern Commandery, as well as Li Xiyuan and Li Xixian. This immortal lord understood they had a deep bond with Li Ximing, but no matter how deep the feelings ran, or how many tears had been shed, the tears would have all dried up by the time they cried to the 35th day after his death. So, when they were burning paper offerings before his spirit tablet, everyone was wailing with dry eyes. Only one statement uttered by the prince roused this immortal lord's spirits. Before the spirit tablet, the prince of the Eastern Commandery stuffed an offering of paper money into the fire basin, and declared, "Ming'er, rest assured, knowing that father will definitely gouge out that Shan Chengling's heart and sacrifice it to you." As we collected the payment for our services, Chang Shan whispered into my ears, "From what his lordship said today, our Eastern Commandery will surely clash with the Southern Commandery." Alas, what a sin! To put it bluntly, it could be said that the little young master's death was fated, and that he was asking for it. Once war breaks out, the commoners will suffer. Lowering his voice even further, he whispered, "Do you know how that little young master died?" "No one in the world knew better than I." Chang Shan continued, "I heard that this little young master was originally a dimwit, but for some reason, one day, he suddenly became lucid. And when he did, goodness me, he immediately kept a young lover of unknown origins in his courtyard. I heard he pampered this gentleman a lot. But not 2 days later, his lordship invited another young master to the residence as his advisor. They said that advisor was quite the extraordinary character, like an immortal. When the little young master saw him, he immediately discarded the young lover in his courtyard and gave all his heart to the advisor. The one in the courtyard, stewing in jealousy, then hooked up with his old flame, and after stabbing the little young master, the pair jumped over the wall and fled. Interesting, don't you think?" My beard twitched a teensy bit. "Interesting," Chang Shan added, "and even better yet, that old flame of the young lover actually turned out to be the great general of the Southern Commandery, Shan Shengling. After the little young master died, the advisor vanished too. This whole farce is straight out of a play, only this turned out to be a tragedy. He lost his life, and now the commoners have to suffer for it." Despondent, I said nothing. "Jade Emperor, Minga, this is all on you." I covered the 2 strings of copper coins under my sleeve and followed the crowd out of the residence. From afar, I saw Jining and Jinchu, wearing mourning sashes, weaving their way in and out of the crowd. Jining eyed the offering platform, as if having design on that plate of pastries placed up as offerings. I had inquired Minga after the fates of these 2 children. The prince of the Eastern Commandery would die of a stroke 5 years later. 3 years after that, Li Xiyuan would meet with a sudden death, and another year later, Li Xixian would meet his end on the battlefield. Jining would become a commander-in-chief in his youth and emerge victorious battle after battle. However, the one who would take the helm of the Eastern Commandery actually turned out to be Jinchu. This timid Jinchu, who tagged along behind Jining all day, would go on to become the founding sovereign of a new dynasty. The world truly was ever-changing and volatile. I had been standing before the funeral awning for a long time. Jinning's swiveling eyes stopped on me, and he waddled over. "Hey, old Daoist priest with the long beard. What are you looking at?" As usual, Jinchu followed behind him. Jinning would be quite the philanderer in the future. This immortal lord looked at him, imagining him relishing in the embrace of dozens of beautiful concubines. What a worrisome child! I took out 2 little jade gourd pendants from my sleeve and bent over. This humble Daoist sees that both little young masters have auspicious faces that bode good fortune, so I'm giving this pair of jade charms to both of you, so you may establish an affinity with the Dao. Jinning reached out to take them, but Jinchu tugged on his sleeve and looked up at me. "You're a Daoist priest of unknown origin. Is there something you want in exchange for giving us things? I laughed. Since this humble deist is able to come here to partake in the ritual ceremony, my origins are naturally verified. How else is a common person able to enter the Prince of the Eastern Commandery's manor? These 2 pieces of jade are merely to establish an affinity with the Dao, there are no other motives. If the little young master really wants to reward this humble deist with a small something, I stroked my beard and looked at Jinning's hand, then you may give this bamboo tube to me. How about it? Jinning looked at the bamboo tube in his hand, as if he was loath to part with it, then he looked back at the jade gourds in my hand and hesitated. Jinsha blinked, looked at Jinning, then said to me, then I'll give you this, but can you give us the gourds and not take the bamboo tube? He felt in his belt with his little hand, then held out a fist before me and spread his palm. I looked at that piece of jade, delighted. What a stroke of luck, having it all delivered into my hands without needing to expend further effort. Thank you, little young master. I picked up a pendant and handed it to Jinshu. Jinning yelled, hey, we agreed on 2, so why only 1? I shook my head. This little young master's gift is only enough to exchange for 1. One thing for another of similar value, isn't that only fair? You said earlier that it was free. Jinning retorted. I stroked my beard again. I did, but I've changed my mind now. Jinning scrunched his nose and glared at me. Jinshu stuffed the pendant into Jinning's hand. Forget it, don't waste your breath with him. I don't care about this, anyway. Here, take it. Jinning shook his head hard and held the bamboo tube out to me. Here you go. Give me that. This immortal lord beamed. Thank you, little young master. May heaven's blessings be with you. I took the bamboo tube and handed Jinning the other pendant. You like the bamboo tube, so why give it to him? I don't want this pendant, Jinsha said. Jinning stuffed the pendant into his hand. You exchanged your item to give me, and I exchanged mine to give you. The 2 things we gave him were both taken from little uncle's room without permission, anyway. If our dads recognize them, we'd have to take a beating from the broom. Only then did Jinsha take the gourd and tuck it into his sleeve. This immortal lord left with the 2 items, triumphant. On returning to the Daoist temple, I gave Chongshan a string of coins and thanked him for taking care of me. A big smile bloomed on Chongshan's face. Fellow Daoist Guanjian is truly too courteous. If you visit Shangchuan again in the future, you must come seek me out at the temple. That night, I admired the bamboo tube and jade pendant, feeling smug. Standing before the bed, Heng Wen remarked, do you have peace of mind now that you have coaxed and swindled both items out of the children? So how about it? Do you think of him when you look at them? How could this immortal lord do something as shady as swindling children? Those 2 jade gourds were treasures on which I had cast a protective spell. It would ensure that no evil or demon could get to them, and keep them safe and sound at that. I smiled obsequiously at Heng Wen. Do you want to lie down on the bed? Forget it, Heng Wen said. That bed of yours is no cleaner than the shroud Li Siming was buried in. The next day, I took my leave from Minjihu Temple and left Shangchuan City. Guanjianzi was of mortal flesh, so this immortal lord could not ride the clouds. I could only walk the entire way to Zhujia ferry crossing, which was 4 or 5 days on foot. After I was a long way from Shangchuan City, Heng Wen materialized and accompanied me on foot. Although he manifested himself, he still wore Mr. Zhao's looks, unwilling as he was to accommodate me in the form of a Daoist priest himself. The entire way we went, passers-by all cast sidelong glances at us, finding this duo combination to be quite strange. 5 days later, I stood in the evening before Riverfront Inn. Dark clouds hung overhead, making it extremely dim. The high waves of the Yangtze River slapped against the riverbanks, while the inn's banner meant to beckon customers flapped in the wind. With a bamboo pole in my right hand bearing the words iron-clad fortune-telling on a black banner and a thin horsetail whisk swinging from my left, I strode into the inn. The waiter initially cast a sidelong glance at me and could hardly be bothered as he made to turn away, but then he saw Heng Wen entering, and his face turned positively radiant. When they realized that Heng Wen and I were traveling companions, and when I fished out the silver, the smiles on the waiters and innkeepers' faces widened even more. They very solicitously arranged for 2 deluxe rooms upstairs, and just as solicitously prepared the best seat in the hall downstairs, where they served their best wine and dishes. After the dishes were served, a waiter came to pour the wine with infinite hospitality, and started a conversation with me. "Dao Zhang, you have the divine demeanor of an immortal. I can tell at a glance that you're a great master." "Not at all, not at all," I answered modestly. "My cultivation is meager, and my knowledge in the arts is superficial. I can merely read faces to predict one's fortune and future prospects." The waiter's eyes shone with admiration. "So," I continued, "this humble daist also has a smattering knowledge in reading feng shui, observing astronomical phenomena, and the divination art of Kimandungia." The admiration in the waiter's eyes brimmed even more. "So," I continued further, "actually, this humble one can also take a look to see if there are any occurrences of demonic possessions, supernatural hauntings, and even dubious, tricky illnesses that cannot be cured." The waiter's face lit up with pleasant surprise. He promptly set down the wine jar and bowed. "Dao Zhang, you're a blessing straight from heaven. We do have a patient with a tricky illness in our humble inn. Could I trouble you to grant us some compassion and take a look at him?" The innkeeper personally led Heng Wen and me up the stairs. Several more waiters scurried about, doing their utmost to serve. According to the innkeeper, an esteemed master had come to the inn with an entourage. They had initially intended to cross the river, but the waves on the river were too strong, which made it impossible for them to pass, so they had stayed in the inn. A gentleman from the group was down with illness. Several days later, the master seemed to have some urgent matter to attend to and left with half of the party, leaving the other half to take care of the sick man. But the sick man simply would not get better, and the remaining people trickled out for their own important matters. Eventually, only the invalid remained. Before the last one left, he left a huge sum of money and said they would be back in a few days. He instructed us to take care of the sick gentleman. He even went as far as drawing his sword to hack off a corner of the table to intimidate us, saying that this was what would happen to us if we did not take good care of him. The innkeeper's tone was greatly distressed. But that gentleman's health deteriorated by the day. We looked for every physician we could find to see him, and they all said that he couldn't be cured. All he does now is lie on the bed and cough out mouthful after mouthful of blood. He's only barely hanging in there by a thread. I beseech you to think of every way possible to save his life. How are we going to explain it if he dies and that group of people returns?" The innkeeper pushed the door open to reveal the bedridden invalid breathing his last. The oil lamp was not very bright, but it was enough for me to see that supposedly dying man on the bed. Having gotten a clear look, I immediately said to the innkeeper, "Don't worry. No matter what happens, he won't die." The innkeeper grabbed me, a drowning man clutching at straws, his hands trembling as he said, "Dao Zhang, you're truly a living immortal who understands the secrets of the universe with a glance. With your word that he won't die, I can rest assured knowing my head will stay intact." I took one step at a time into the room and walked over to the bed. The man on the bed suddenly opened his eyes, a pair of black orbs that appeared abnormally bright under the light. He stared at this immortal lord, and opened his mouth to very clearly say, "Li Siming, are you here to make me pay for your life?" This immortal lord got a fright and took a big step back. "Oh, dear me, Jade Emperor! Don't tell me Tianzhu has suddenly attained enlightenment? To think he could recognize me at a glance." "Dao Zhang, don't be surprised," the innkeeper said. "This gentleman is severely ill, and in his delirium has been dropping this phrase on everyone he sees. When the master was still around, he would step out of their room and head downstairs to smash the tables. Too many of our tables have already been destroyed by him." The innkeeper heaved a long, weary sigh. I calmed myself. So, he was delirious with fever. If that was the case, was Tianxia still feeling guilty over stabbing this immortal lord? I walked over and sat at the man's bedside. Mu Ruian's bright, shiny eyes were still fixed on me. I smiled affably back, and picked up one of his hands to put on a show of reading his pulse. The few grams of flesh I had so painstakingly nursed back onto Tianxia's body had all burned off. At that time, he had been all skin and bones, and now even that layer of skin covering the bones on his wrist was so thin, it looked like there was practically nothing. I set 2 fingers on his bone and partially closed my eyes, putting on the look of a master. Heng Wen stood beside the table with the small, lit oil lamp and coughed once, a move that complemented the innkeeper's sigh. Dao Zhang is a great master, as expected. Even the way you feel the pulse differs from the others, he marveled. This is my own unique way of taking pulses, I said leisurely. In fact, I'm even better at reading pulses with silk threads. I retracted my hand. On the bed, Mu Ruian coughed 4 or 5 times. A few drops of blood splattered from his mouth. Having very tragically cultivated a habit from all my time attending to him in the Prince of the Eastern Commandery's manor, I reached out and wiped off the blood for him with my sleeve. With eyes both shut, Mu Ruian spoke, his words breaking up. Li Siming, what kind of ghost do you think I'll turn into this time? Benefactor, I spoke up, this humble one's deist name is Guanjianzi. Don't worry. With me here, I'll surely cure you of your illness and restore you back to health. Mu Ruian's emaciated fingers grasped my sleeve. He made a pained sound in his throat. I harmed you, cost you your life, yet you want to preserve my life and make me suffer. Forget it. This is the retribution I deserve. Oh, looks like my words aren't falling on deaf ears. Heng Wen yawned. Deist master, take your time on the diagnosis and treatment. This humble one is going to bed first. Having said that, he turned and left. I shifted, pulling my sleeve from Tianxia's grip, and stood from the edge of the bed. How is it? The innkeeper asked, impatient. I stroked my beard and shook my head. Not too good. This gentleman is afflicted with a chronic illness on top of his emotional distress. I shall have to return to my room first and meditate on it, so the prescription can only be ready tomorrow morning. May I ask if your esteemed inn has birds' nests available? You can decoct a bowl for him to take first. That master did bring along several kilograms of bird nests when he came, the innkeeper said. There are still some left. The quick-witted waiters immediately left to decoct it. The innkeeper respectfully saw this immortal lord to the guest room, where he ordered a brand new wooden bathtub to be carried out and for bathing water to be prepared. He even gave us 2 complimentary plates of dried fruits as a late-night snack. Before I stepped out of Mu Ruian's room, I cast a look back at him. The pallid figure lying in the dim light of the oil lamp looked not unlike a paper figure. I stepped out the door, and he did not say a word more. The guest room next to mine must have been Heng Wen's, and the door was closed. I took a look, and told the innkeeper to send the brand new wooden bathtub and bathing water to the gentleman in the other room, as well as to change the bedding and pillows in his room. This gentleman was a distinguished personage, and everything he used must be the newest and the cleanest. At any rate, he could afford to pay for it. The innkeeper, naturally, acknowledged my instructions in the affirmative. When I was done washing up, I blew out the oil lamp and lay down on the bed, holding the copper 8 trigrams tally in my palms as I extracted my true form. At each stop of our journey here, we would always book 2 guest rooms, one for Guanjianzi, and one for Heng Wen and me. Since he did not come to lift me out, I could only go looking for him. The lights in Heng Wen's rooms had been extinguished too. I felt for the bed in the darkness. The person on the bed turned over and asked, "Done with the consultation?" I let out a wry laugh. "Yet." Then I rubbed my hands. "Move over inside and make room for me." Heng Wen scoffed and shifted a little. I took advantage of the space to lie down and pull a corner of the quilt over myself. Tianchu is severely ill, Heng Wen remarked. Seems to me like he's hanging on to life by a mere thread. I doubt mortal methods could cure his illness, and the Jade Emperor doesn't allow us to heal him with our divine powers. I wonder what miraculous remedies Guanjai Unzide Azang has to treat him with. I'll deal with it as needed. If all else fails, then just leave him hanging, I said. Heng Wen chuckled. Could you bear to do so? It took just a few words from Tianchu, and you've already forgotten that one stab, right? You say to leave him hanging, but you already have a plan in mind, don't you? I did not dare to respond to that. Heng Wen's appraisal of me was correct. I did indeed have a plan. Outside the window, the wind stirred indistinctly. I was very familiar with this movement, it had followed us this entire journey. Is this what you are planning? Heng Wen asked, voice hushed. There was the sound of the wind, a slight rustling, then all was silent. 2 hours later, I softly opened the door, and sure enough, there was a bundle of neatly secured lingzi lying by the threshold. This species was also called the Jinluo lingzi. Although it was an extremely valuable divine herb, it grew in the mortal world. I had only seen it a couple times back in the heavenly court. This bouquet of lingzi was meant for Heng Wen, and its sender was that dauntless, homosexual romantic of a fox who had been yearning for him. That said, this fox had been furtively following us the moment Heng Wen and I left Shangchuan City. Furbal was quite the resourceful one. He could always sneak into the inn where Heng Wen and I stayed in the middle of the night, where he could linger and fix his gaze outside the room before putting down a handful of Jinluo lingzi. Jinluo lingzi could purge impure vital energy and nourish the primordial spirit. The fox was probably worried that Heng Wen, being dragged through this corrupted world of the mortals, would be tainted with the ills of the secular world, and so he gave him these. This immortal lord was a compassionate one. Alas, the world abounded with lovesick romantics, I would treat this matter as one as ephemeral as floating clouds. After Heng Wen took the lingzi, he would always keep them away in his sleeve with a smile, feigning ignorance to his sender. And so, to this date, the fox still thought that he had concealed himself well. This went on, day after day. Holding the lingzi, I returned to the bed and flashed Heng Wen an obsequious smile. Would you mind sharing a piece or two of this with me? I knew it. You are thinking of using it to save Tianchu, Heng Wen said lazily. Take it if you want it, but let me just remind you again that you descended to the mortal realm to set up trials, not to save him from hardships and suffering. It looks like you are veering from the script, from breaking up the lovebirds to falling for the beauty. Rein yourself in and remember not to go too far. I tucked the lingzi in my clothes and lay back on the bed. Although Tianchu Xing Jun and I would clash after the fact, he still saved me once, after all. I have to repay him for this debt of gratitude somehow. I, Song Yao Yuan Jun, was the most averse to owing others debts of gratitude, especially Tianchu, with whom I would eventually fail to see eye to eye. Many years ago, when I had just been promoted to the title of Guangxi Yuan Jun, there had been a day when Heng Wen left for the Western Paradise, the Buddha realm, for a doctrine dialogue. Feeling lonely in the heavenly court, I went to Baiwa Ling Jun's palace. To relieve my boredom, I had tea and a look at the celestial beasts he was raising. It had just so happened that there was a one-horned dragon that strayed while cultivating to be an immortal, and had gone berserk. With sword in hand, this immortal lord fought the dragon. Unfortunately, that beast spewed smoke into my face and, with a sweep of its tail, sent me flying several meters away. I was utterly disgraced and heavily injured. Coincidentally, Tianchu Xing Jun was also at Ling Jun's residence. Although he was usually indifferent to those around him, he treated my injuries. I owed him a debt of gratitude ever since. Several hundred years later, when we ended up confronting each other at Ling Xiao Palace, I still thought of that moment as an unreal dream. The same Tianchu Xing Jun who had once saved me, the Tianchi seeing Jun, who was cold and aloof, now actually wanted to plant a trumped-up charge against me and have me exiled to the mortal world, never to return to the heavenly court. When Tianchi pressed his charge against you back then, he had some evidence to back it up. So it can't be said that he wrongly accused you, Heng Wen said. But I can't figure out why he would do so. Tianchi would never do such a thing, given his character, yet he did. There has to be a reason. I can't be bothered to know the reason, I said. In any case, I've repaid my debt and done what the Jade Emperor has instructed me to do. He failed to frame me back then, so I'll treat it as if it never happened. When he returns to the heavenly court, we will still be fellow immortals who smile when we see each other. I, Song Yao Yuan Jun, am a magnanimous immortal. The next day, I woke up early in the morning and prepared to inform the innkeeper to decoct a bowl of Lingzi for Mu Ruian. When I headed downstairs with Heng Wen, however, I saw a bunch of waiters rubbing their hands together as they gathered around a cage. One of the waiters greeted us jubilantly. We caught a rare beast last night. Do the two of you want to come over for a look? I readily agreed and leaned over. It turned out to be an old friend in the cage. A silvery white furball crouched in the cage, all huddled up with its head drooping, looking forlorn like a hero at a dead-end Xiang Yu the Conqueror at Wujiang River. Fox, how did you get caught? Heng Wen, too, was taken aback. The fox peered up at him, its eyes glistening as though filled with tears, and lowered its head to crouch in the corner of its cage. The waiters were all very excited. The stray cats and weasels have been making a lot of commotion of late, so we set up a live trap under the eaves, hoping to catch those animals, but we didn't expect to catch this beast. Dea Zhang, you are experienced and knowledgeable. This fox's coat color is rare and extremely valuable, right? I wonder if we would be able to sell it for 10 taels of silver if we skin it alive. This immortal lord held up a palm and recited a Daoist mantra before saying, "What a sin, what a sin. It may be a beast, but skinning it alive is too brutal. Heaven decreed that it is to meet its end here. On account of this humble Daoist, at least give it a quick end before skinning it." The fox jerked its head up and glared sharply at me, then it looked miserably at Heng Wen and lowered its head again. I saw what appeared to be bloodstains on its right front paw. It seemed to be a recent injury and not at all minor. As expected, Heng Wen declared, "This humble one shall offer 10 taels of gold. Sell it to me." He set the gold ingots on the table, and the waiters broke out into radiant smiles, looking very much like a cluster of brilliant sunflowers. One said, in an attentive tone, "We will immediately skin this fox for you." "It looks very rare," Heng Wen said, "so I'll keep it alive for now." "Benefactor, aren't you afraid of the fox's odor?" I asked. The fox glared hatefully at me again. Heng Wen opened the cage and carried the fox out in his arms. "I don't smell a thing. Let's keep it." The fox thrust its head deep into Heng Wen's bosom and nuzzled against him. Back in my room upstairs, I closed the door. The fox lay in Heng Wen's lap and huddled into a ball, looking very cozy. I leaned against the table. "Furball, you looked like a stud, well-defined chest and all, the last time this immortal lord saw you. You could be said to be a man, but look at you now, so frail and delicate." The fox immediately jumped off Heng Wen's lap and rolled into human form. In a display of his dignity and honor, he coldly said, "This humble one is Xian Li, and it seems like you know that." He twitched his ears and did not look at me, instead, he gazed at Heng Wen like a man besotted. "Thank you, Qing Jun, for saving my life. You're seriously injured. Jinluo Lingzi is a divine object that you can't take, and if you do, you have to show your real form. Why take this risk?" Heng Wen said gently. Of course, Heng Wen had always been a good-tempered person who was gentle with everyone and everything. "For Qing Jun, it's worth it even if I lose my life," the fox said. "I am willing." "Oh, so mushy." Heng Wen stretched out a hand, offering him an elixir pill. Take this elixir first, it might benefit you. The fox palmed it in his paw and gazed at Heng Wen in a manner that I found very nerve-wracking. It was quite a while before he delivered the pill to his mouth and swallowed it. It was inevitable that this immortal lord gave a pointed cough. The wound on your arm looks extremely odd. How did you get it? The fox initially treated me as though I was invisible, but Heng Wen was looking at him too, so he answered in a muted tone, I was wounded by a mortal. That greatly surprised me. Furball had at least 1,000 years of cultivation. Which mortal was tough and fearsome enough to injure it? Heng Wen had the same question. What is this person's origin? I'm surprised he was able to injure you. I don't know his origin, the fox answered insipidly. He actually came to my cave to steal the Lingzi, so I struck out at him to teach him a lesson, but in a moment of carelessness, I ended up slightly injured. I locked him up in my cave. It seems like his surname is Shan. So, Nanming Dijun was not a heartless cad who had discarded his lover after all, but had been caught by the fox while stealing medicine for Tianchu. Oh, this immortal lord was somewhat touched by Nanming's love for Tianchu. He had been aggravatingly ruthless back when he was breaking up lovebirds, and now that he was love-struck, he was even more aggravating. Love. Oh, such is love. But, come to think of it, how had he known to steal the divine Lingzi, planted by a demon, to treat Tianchu? Who had pointed him in that direction? What did you do to the Lingzi thief after catching him? I asked the fox. Locked him up, the fox answered. Just locked him up. I wondered. He stole your Lingzi and injured your arm. Didn't you torture him or break his limbs for fun? The fox cast a glance at me and answered in a cold voice, no. I've never been one to split hairs with mortals. I only broke one of his arms and tied him up in my cave. He retrained his gaze on Heng Wen. I've never hurt a mortal. The fox was laying out his lofty character for all to see. He gazed at Heng Wen, his eyes sincere, while the tips of his ears trembled ever so slightly. Heng Wen smiled at him, earning an instant beam of delight. The fox looked very much like he had the intent to revert to his original form and jump back onto Heng Wen's lap. As chance would have it, there came the sound of footsteps outside the door. The fox immediately reverted to its original form and bounded onto Heng Wen's lap. This immortal lord caught it by the scruff of its neck and lifted it up. Furball twisted its body around and bared its coldly glinting fangs. The waiter knocked on the door. Gentlemen, your breakfast is ready. Please make your way downstairs for your meal. I tucked the fox under my armpit and held it there. With my free hand, I opened the door and uttered a Daoist mantra. We'll be right down. Thank you. I closed the door again. The fox leaped to the ground and rolled into human form. Heng Wen and I got ready to head downstairs, where our meals were waiting. Before we left, this immortal lord even asked the fox out of the kindness of my heart, do you want me to bring back a steamed bun for you? The fox answered defiantly, nope. As we returned after breakfast, I crossed my fingers that the fox had already returned to its lair. But the moment I opened the door, I saw a white furball huddled up contentedly on Heng Wen's quilt, taking a little nap. The fox would not return to its lair. It argued with conviction and logic. Heng Wen Qingjun had brought it in full view of the public. If it were to vanish all of a sudden, it would surely rouse suspicions. So, in order to spare Heng Wen Qingjun further trouble, it decided to stay for the time being. Perhaps moved by Furball's devoted love, and also probably because he found it an interesting situation, Heng Wen tacitly allowed it to stay. The fox was ecstatic, but this immortal lord was a little worried. I had also fallen into unrequited love in the past, and I knew this sort of thing would be even harder to extricate from the more it dragged on. Tianchu and Nanming were a poignant example, right in front of us. While Heng Wen was different, he had a shortcoming, and that was that he enjoyed trying things out for the novelty and fun of it. If he were to get a taste of love with the fox on a whim, I shuddered. Moreover, Tianchu was still in his room, barely hanging in there by half a breath as he waited to consume the Lingzi. Jinluo Lingzi was a gift from the fox to Heng Wen. With the fox staying here, how could this immortal lord swallow my pride and ask Heng Wen for it? There was no use in sitting here and worrying about Heng Wen and the fox, so I went to check up on Tianchu. 2 waiters were meticulously cleaning up Tianchu's room. They said since last night, Tianchu had coughed out several more mouthfuls of blood. The innkeeper also made his way into the room and looked at me expectantly. "Dao Zhang, you said last night that you'd definitely have a prescription today. Do you have the medicine?" This immortal lord coughed. "I do, but..." 2 knocks on the door, and a waiter entered the room, a bowl of dark green soup in his hands. "Dao Zhang, this humble servant has arrived with the medicine." I was astonished. Heng Wen strode into the room. I noted the time and had it decocted beforehand. "Let him drink it, and we'll see if it works." 2 waiters eased Mu Ruian up and pried his teeth open. This immortal lord fed him the medicine, 1 spoonful at a time. Mu Ruian took to the Jinluo Lingzi well, and the medicine went down smoothly. After being settled back on the pillow, he remained still. The innkeeper hemmed and hawed. "Dao Zhang, this gentleman." Mu Ruian's breathing was even and shallow, and the distressed expression on his face receded some too. Only when he was sleeping soundly could he look like this. Knowing this, I said, "He's fine. Let this benefactor rest quietly for now. Hopefully, his illness will take a turn for the better when he wakes." Mu Ruian slept for an entire day and night. The innkeeper and waiters worried that this immortal lord had actually poisoned him to death, so they would go in and out of the room to check on his breathing. The waiters lay in wait by the front and back doors, beneath the windows, and before the staircase on the ground floor, fearing that I could flee when I saw my chance. So I simply moved a chair to sit by the table in Mu Ruian's room when I was not sleeping, saving the innkeeper and waiters from having their hearts in their mouths all the time, and played chess with myself to relieve my boredom. When night fell, I returned to my room, extracted my real form, and went to look for Heng Wen. The fox was in his original form, sleeping on a pillow on a chair. I picked it up and pointed next door. "The body this immortal lord uses in the daytime is lying on the bed in that room. You can move him to the floor and have the bed to yourself." The fox hugged the pillow tightly with his paws. "Why won't you let me sleep in the same room as Qing Jun?" This immortal lord did not mince words. "You have feelings for Heng Wen Qing Jun. This immortal lord is afraid something might happen if you are in the same room as him." The fox transformed into a human and said with a cold smile, "Song Yao Yuan Jun has a filthy mind. I admire Qing Jun, but I would never force him if he was unwilling." Yet, I thought, but that's not what I'm worried about to begin with. This Heng Wen Qing Jun is not so easily coerced. Even I myself have no hope of success if I so wished, much less you with your little bit of cultivation. On the bed, Heng Wen did not stir even the slightest. Presumably, he was having a blast, listening to the commotion here. So I steadied my tone and reasoned it out with the fox. Qing Jun and I descended to the mortal world with a mission, and there are fellow immortals up in heaven watching our every move. The rules of the heavenly court are strict. I fear it will incur suspicion if the conversations and actions between you two are too intimate." The fox sat on the chair with his arms folded before his chest, his eyes flashing with faint, green light. "Forgive this humble one for disagreeing with Song Yuan Jun's reason. Song Yuan Jun sleeps on the same bed with Qing Jun every night, and I heard that you often mooch food and wine from Qing Jun's residence back in the heavenly court. It seems like you have never been punished by the laws of heaven, so if you ask me, the rules of the heavenly court are not as strict and rigorous as the rumors make them out to be." This mongrel actually went as far as to make inquiries about this immortal lord and Heng Wen. And where in the world did he hear of untrue gossip, saying that this immortal lord often sponges off Heng Wen? The fox continued, "Is Yuan Jun going to say next that I can't do what you can do just because I'm a demon and you are an immortal? He straightened his robe and stood up. I said before that I'd never cause trouble for Qing Jun. Since Yuan Jun has reminded me of that, I'll go over next door to sleep. It's just that. The fox walked to the wall, then looked back out of the corner of his eye. I may be a demon now, but I only have to pass 1,500 years of heavenly tribulations, and I'll be able to ascend to immortality. It remains to be seen how things will turn out when we are in heaven. With a flick of his sleeve, he stepped through the wall to sleep in the next room. When I dragged a chair over and sat, Heng Wen spoke up softly, I've never seen you take the rules of the heavenly court so seriously. Did what happened to Tianzhu and Nanming make you see the light? More or less, I answered with a dry laugh, and stood to walk over to the bed. By the way, it was fortunate you sent over the bowl of Lingzi decoction today. Thank you, thank you. Just remember, you owe me a drink, Heng Wen said lazily. Actually, I wanted to see what else you can do further down the line after repaying your so-called debt to Tianzhu. Of course, I'll be doing whatever the Jade Emperor instructs me to and whatever Minga arranges, I replied. Speaking of which, there had been no sign of activity from old man Minga these few days. Strange. Heng Wen moved inside the bed to make way for me, and I lay down on my side. Suddenly, I remembered something. Oh, right. Isn't Nanming still being held captive in the fox's cave? Since the fox isn't leaving, Nanming must be starving in there. Given that I've already saved Mu Ruian, should I commit another act of kindness? Get the fox to release him, so that he can have his theatric reunion with Mu Ruian. Heng Wen chuckled beside me. What are you laughing at? I asked. Nothing, Heng Wen said, I just find your words interesting. When the day broke, I went to sit in Mu Ruian's room again to assuage the innkeeper's panic. A waiter found a chess set, and Heng Wen played with me to relieve my boredom. The fox crouched on the chair beside Heng Wen, while the waiters looked back and forth at it. In the thousands of years I had played chess with Heng Wen, I had never beaten him once. I suffered yet another depressing defeat today. The innkeeper, with great attentiveness, instructed the waiters to deliver lunch to the room, which included 5 dishes and 1 jar of wine, along with 1 pot of hot soup. A waiter placed the pot of soup on the table and lifted the lid. The instant a mist of piping hot steam escaped, Mu Ruian, on the bed across the veil of mist, moved. End chapter.